Scene, opening shot of a calm pond with gentle ripples, soft instrumental music playing in the background. Welcome to today's reading of The Devoted Friend, a fairy tale by Oscar Wilde. This story reminds us of the true nature of friendship, where loyalty and kindness can sometimes be one-sided. Let's dive into this story of Hans, a simple man with a kind heart, and Hugh the Miller, whose idea of friendship may not be what it seems. Cut to animated characters of Hans and the Miller with soft, hand-drawn illustrations. Once upon a time there was a man named Hans. He had a small cottage, surrounded by the most beautiful garden. He was kind and generous, sharing everything he had with his friends. But one friend, the miller, took more than he gave. Scene transitions to the water rat and duck conversation by the pond. One day, the old water rat was talking to his friend the duck about the virtues of true friendship. Cut to water rat and duck by the pond. Water rat, friendship is the highest bond. A devoted friend must be fully committed to the other. Linnet enters, overhearing the conversation. And what, may I ask, is your idea of the duties of a devoted friend? Scene transitions to the linnet telling the story to the water rat, and so the linnet began telling the tale of Hans and the miller. Cut to animated scenes of Hans working in his garden. Hans worked hard, day in and day out, in his garden. His flowers bloomed with every season, and he shared the beauty with everyone. But the miller, his so-called best friend, would often take from Hans without offering anything in return. Scene changes to the miller walking past Hans's garden, picking flowers and fruits. The miller would visit, plucking flowers from Hans's garden, taking what he wanted without thought for Hans's well-being. But Hans, with his generous heart, believed that this was the way of friendship. Scene shifts to winter, where Hans struggles with cold and hunger. When winter came, Hans faced hunger and loneliness. Yet the miller, instead of offering help, stayed warm in his home, thinking only of his own comforts. Transition to the miller visiting Hans in the spring with a basket. But when spring returned, so did the miller, with words of kindness and a basket for Hans's flowers. Scene shows the miller asking Hans for a favor. The miller, ever the manipulator, continued asking for favors, all the while promising Hans his broken wheelbarrow in return, a supposed symbol of generosity. Hans, believing in the value of friendship, was eager to help, even at the cost of his own needs. Cut to Hans working hard for the miller, doing his bidding. Hans, always striving to please the miller, worked tirelessly, even when it meant neglecting his own needs, and though the miller's promises seemed kind, they were empty, for they never came to fruition. Scene shows Hans helping the miller on countless tasks. Each day Hans worked harder, yet the miller took more and gave less. But Hans remained devoted, believing that the miller's actions were the true essence of friendship. Scene fades into a stormy night as Hans leaves to help the miller. And so, even in the darkest of storms, Hans continued to serve the miller. But as he trudged through the blizzard, a thought lingered. Was this really friendship? Or was he merely being used? Scene cuts to a final image of Hans working on the mill's roof, exhausted. As Hans worked, the miller's demands never ceased. His generosity was only in words, and Hans, so kind-hearted, never questioned the true nature of their friendship. Fade to black. Ultimately, the story of the devoted friend shows us the importance of understanding true friendship, one that is built on mutual respect and care, not exploitation. Hans, though well-meaning, allowed himself to be taken advantage of, and the miller's one-sided devotion led only to hardship for his friend. Closing shot of the garden, with the flowers Hans once tended, now withered. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Oscar Wilde's The Devoted Friend. Remember, true friendship is not about what you can take, but what you can give, and sometimes it's okay to walk away from those who don't honor that.